Okay, Geometry AB, here we go. 10.6 is a long section. We're going to try to cut this up into a few different videos. We're just going to do about 6 slides today. Now, you guys should all have these notes with you, printed from last time here, earlier in the week, everybody. So what we have here first is just a list of vocabulary, and I think what we're going to try to do is go through each term and then maybe draw it on the next slide right here. So, first thing we do right here is we try to define what a circle is, everybody. And a circle, certainly a shape we all know, this is a word right here you don't have to worry too much about, locus, but a circle is just a set of points that are all going to be equidistant from a common point, which we're going to call our center. So, if we were going to try to draw this freehand here, it's usually a good idea to start with the center first, and we're going to try to draw a set of points that are all the same distance away from that center. Every single point on that circle, and there are an infinite number of them, should all be the same distance away from our center. Now, the center of a circle is just a point, so it's going to be named by a single capital letter, and when we name a circle, the symbol for it is a little circle with a dot in the middle, and a circle is named only by its center. So this circle that we've drawn right here, everybody, is circle P. And I'm just continuing to draw a few more points that are located on the circle itself. Okay. Back to vocab now, everybody. The second word we have to define right here is one that people don't usually know that well by the time they get to geometry, and that word is a chord, a segment with both of its endpoints located on the circle. And so, if we were going to go back to our circle diagram right here, what we could do here is simply draw a line segment that has both of its endpoints located on the circle itself. So if I were to say that this point right here was going to be called A, and this point up here was going to be called B, drawing the one line segment that connects A and B, well, that's an example of a chord right there in blue. All right, let's go back here. A diameter, this is a word that people very often know, is a chord that passes through the center of the circle. So trying to draw a chord here, let's switch colors and maybe we'll go red for a diameter here. And to do this one, I don't know if I drew any points here that work well, but maybe if I connected this point to this point right over here and called this C and this D, that would be an example right there in red of a diameter. It is a chord because both of its endpoints are located on the circle itself, but it does pass through the center of the circle at point P. Next word we have here is, there we go, a radius. And a radius is another word that you've probably heard somewhere along the way in the past, a segment that goes from the center of your circle to any point that's located on the circle itself. So, if we were going to draw a radius, as a matter of fact, we already have 2 of them drawn, but it's probably helpful to draw it a little bit separately right here. A radius would be a segment then that goes from the center to an existing point on the circle. So that would be one radius right there in green, line segment PE. Okay, back to our list right here. So those are the 4 most basic words. The next 2 are weird ones that I'm almost certain you haven't seen before. A tangent, everybody, is a line. That's important here. It's distinct from a radius and a diameter and a chord, which were all line segments. But a tangent is a line that intersects a circle at exactly one point. And these can be a little bit tricky to draw, but if you wanted to try to make a tangent to your circle, all right, we're going to pick a color we haven't used here yet, like maybe a nice purple here, and a tangent would be a line that basically just barely glances off a circle, maybe something like that. All right, so to name that tangent, we would want to name this point right here, which I'm going to call F, but remember that a line needs at least 2 points to name it, so I'm going to put a point G out here and say that line FG is a tangent to this particular circle there. It only intersects the circle at this one point at F, and every other point on that purple line is located outside of the circle. And the last word that we need to define here on this page is going to be another one that I doubt you guys have heard before, and that's going to be a secant. And again, just like a tangent, a secant is a line, not a segment, but the interesting thing here is that it intersects a circle at exactly 2 points. So this one is going to be far easier to draw than the tangent we drew on the last one. A secant is simply a line that cuts through a circle and then comes back out the other side. So we'll go with a lovely shade of brown right here, and if we were to just draw a line that does something like this here, that's an example in brown there of a secant line. If we named some points right here, we could call this one point H, and then this other point of intersection maybe we'll call point I, and what we have right there in brown, everybody, line HI, is an example of a secant line because it intersects the circle at two different spots. Now, one important thing to note about circles right here, since every point on this circle is equidistant from the center, it's important to realize that line segment PD, right there, has to have the same measure as line segment PC and the same measure as line segment PE. All three of those line segments we just noted are radii of that circle, and they all need to be congruent. So that's kind of a walkthrough of some of the basic vocab within a circle. So let's take a look at what's going on over here. All right, new vocabulary term now, an arc. It's a word people know, but we try to define it formally here in geometry as an arc simply being a portion of a circle. So if you were to think about a hula hoop or a pretzel ring or something like that, breaking it up into different pieces, that's what an arc would look like. Basically, an arc looks like this, and if you were to connect the whole thing, you'd have an entire circle right there. So that's what an arc would be. Three different types of arcs that we're going to try to define here, everybody. The first one is a minor arc, and that's one that makes up less than half of the circle. Now, what I hope we know already is that the total number of degrees in a circle is 360 degrees. Half of a circle, then, is going to be 180 degrees, and a minor arc is going to be anything that makes up less than 180 degrees. So an example of a minor arc here might look something like arc, here we go, arc AB. And arc AB is the arc that starts right here at A and ends when it gets to B. That little yellow highlighted portion is part of a circle, but it makes up less than 180 degrees or less than half of it. And a symbol for arc, not one that we've used before, works a lot like line segment. We just draw an arc over the top rather than a straight line segment. So we would call this minor arc AB because it makes up less than half of the circle. Now when we move on to major arc, as you probably guess, if a minor arc is less than 180 degrees, a major arc is going to make up more than 180 degrees, or more than half the circle. Now, not trying to reinvent the wheel, and that's a circle pun right there, hope you got it, we have an arc that goes from A to B here in yellow, but those same 2 points, A and B, if we went the other direction, would actually make up more than half of the circle right here. So there's a major arc that goes from A to B as well. Now, in trying to name that major arc, things can get a little bit confusing if we just call it by its endpoints, A, B again, because it wouldn't be clear if we meant the minor arc or the major arc that goes from A to B. So to name a major arc, we're always going to use 3 letters. We start with one of the endpoints, which would be A. We name any point that it passes through, so we could choose either D or C here. I'm going to go with D. All right, so we started at A, we passed through point D, and then we keep going until we get to point B as the other endpoint, and we put an arc symbol over the